Hi, Mark. Welcome back.
Hi, how are you?
Hi. For those who may not know, Mark Kennedy is very involved in politics, geopolitics especially, and he honored me with being on episode 3. I believe it was what, episode 9 you were on,
I
right?
think so, yeah.
And I think you helped me close out season 3. And you're so knowledgeable that I decided to have you as the first guest of season 4.
It's my honor.
Thank you. Thank you. All right. So I think we're going to just jump in because we have so much to cover.
Yeah, we do.
It has been nonstop since President Trump took office. So, what was your initial reaction to Mara Gaza?
Well, first of all, we got. I always when I cover these stuff and report on these, on those issues, we got to be. I love to be the most realistic possible, right? So, of course, that's something historic. It's something that and Trump is very calculated in actually when he announced it. This announcement was very calculated. There's no questions about it. I think Netanyahu actually found out of that like an hour before he actually said it, like in front of the cameras. But it's
I mean, I just have to interject here. Are you sure he found out before? Because he seemed absolutely shocked,
yes,
as did Susan Biles.
yes, I do think he found out before. This is basically what I know from my sources. He did find out before, but it was still in a shocking phase. I think the way he said it, Netanyahu was caught a bit off guard in the way he said it, because as you know, Donald Trump is not, politically correct in any way or form. So he just, said it out loud. Maybe the U.S. should take basically control of Gaza, and we're going to see the rebuilding of Gaza, and then the reconstructing, and it's going to be a very great Riviera, he said, um, in that region, which is a great piece of land, and like a real estate guy, he just, he sees something. I heard, I saw someone just joking around and said, he saw free Palestine, and he said, "Oh, so you got a free piece of land. Why not take it, and reconstruct it and make it into a fabulous place?" So it's all about for him. I think, as a businessman and as a real estate developer, I think he looks at it as as an opportunity. But and on a serious note, that's just fluctuating, you know, just bizarre statements. But on a serious note, how I look at it is it in a negative way and a positive way.
Yeah, I would
I
like
know
to
a lot
hear
of the
your. So, Mark, I want to hear your. Okay, first, I think we should define what Mar Agaza is looking at right now. So, I'll add for the audience. Okay, so I think we should timestamp this. So, we're recording this on Thursday, February 6th. And I'm saying we should timestamp because by the time it goes out to the audience, it's probably going to be another week and a half. So as we know, things move at lightning speed with this White House. Plus, next week the puppet king of Israel East is coming to the White House, aka Jordan. So
yes.
obviously, things are going to be added, removed, rescinded by the time that meeting concludes. So help me and help the audience understand. So right now, because I remember, we all were listening to that conference. I believe it was 2 nights ago. So when they had that press conference with Netanyahu, Prime Minister Netanyahu, he had said we're going to permanently move the Arab occupiers out of Gaza. I refuse to call them Palestinians. For those who know, Jews were called Palestinians in Israel from 136 AD to 1948. So anyone who uses the term Palestinians to apply it to Arab occupiers is upholding the anti-Semitic KGB's Operation SIG, like literally upholding the entire reason Jews have been murdered in Israel since 1967. So, but bar none on that, we're just going to call them illegal occupiers from here on in. So he said we're going to permanently move them. And my initial reaction was, of course, shock and joy, because I've for years have been pushing for Israel to have land buffers in Judea and Samaria, land buffers in Gaza. It's what's needed. We can talk about Sisi's offer to Netanyahu in 2014, a little bit later on, and how that went nowhere, and that was Netanyahu's fault. Um, so I went to sleep that night thinking, oh my gosh, this is like the best idea ever. Then I woke up in the morning and I saw Saudi Arabia's press release, and they completely balked at the idea of moving the illegal occupiers. And they, did you see the press release by any chance?
I did.
Yes. Okay. So let's share it with the audience what it said. It said they basically doubled down. They said that we're not going to make peace with Israel unless not only is there a anti-Semitic two-state solution, but one with East Jerusalem, which is an anti-Semitic terminology from the Jordanian illegal occupation of Judea and Samaria, the Jewish ancestral heartland, for those who may not be familiar. So, what they have been, what the anti-Semites have been requesting of Israel, this is for the audience, of Israel for the past now nearly 60 years, is to divide Jerusalem. Jerusalem has only been the capital of the Jewish capital, right? Undivided. So they want to steal half of the capital and apply it to yet another terrorist state within Israel. So we have Israel East, which was which is Jordan. So that's a terrorist state inside Israel. We have 2/3 of Judea and Samaria, already a terrorist state thanks to the Oslo terrorist accords. And then we are maybe about to have Gaza as a third terrorist state, but wrapped up in a little glitzy bow. So Saudi said we're not going to have a peace deal unless there's going to be a two-state solution with East Jerusalem as its capital and back to 1967 borders. So they tripled down on on that. And so in the morning, I was watching the press conference with what's her name? Caroline Levitt is the new press secretary.
Yes.
Okay, so she obviously was questioned about this new Mara Gaza deal, and she doubled down on apparently a new development that this is no longer going to be a permanent movement of the illegal occupiers out of Gaza, but a temporary temporary relocation of the illegal occupiers while we rebuild into this basically Dubai on the Mediterranean Sea. And then all of these illegal occupiers can come on back. We're not going to have Hamas there. And so we need to talk about the absolute misunderstanding between, and again, I don't blame Trump because it's not Trump's job to understand the history and what's like, he sees, okay, we have a problem, which is Jews being murdered in Israel. We have a war torn area in Gaza. Israel doesn't want these Arab occupiers next to them because they're murderous, right? Like towards the Israelis. So, let's build up this area, which again was fine, but then letting them back in is not going to solve the Hamas problem because Hamas literally is the population. So I want your
Yeah.
thoughts and opinions on all that.
Again, so we have to. It's so complicated in a certain sense because it's definitely a bizarre idea. Trump is a person that and we saw it over and over again. What how he communicates and how he deals with different countries and different subjects. He'll throw out the most outrageous thing um, that people will just lambast, like they're just going to go crazy at what he said, and he'll make the middle look quite like interesting and normal because of the crazy thing that he announced, right? So this is he goes always to the most extreme way, and then he comes back a bit so he can get a deal. Um, there's so many ways how to look at it. There's a way to say Trump is serious. He wants that territory, and he's thinking out of the box. I don't know if it's something that the U.S. could make money off, off of it. So in a certain way, we have to think about, you know, is it going to cost the U.S. rather than actually, making money off of it. But at the end of the day, in terms of Israel, just about only uh, this kind of outrageous thing. We talk about occupiers of Gaza. If it's a U.S. territory, there's really no occupiers, right? Like, is it a part of Israel or is it not a part of Israel? Is Gaza a part of Israel or is Gaza not a part of Israel? And this is something to people in the last 24 hours or whatever it is. Because for me, it's like, what, 1 second, all these Israelis, in the on the right, fighting about Gaza and constant war back and forth, pulling out of Gaza in 2005. Um, all what occurred in the past 15 to 20 years somehow. I thought this was a part of Israel. Is it a part of Israel? Of
Of
course
course.
it is. So if it is, based on what the right says, why is everyone jumping on this great deal? Which again, I don't have a problem with that. I'm an American. But if Gaza is a part of Israel, why would Israel that fought so hard, you know, for Gaza and then just, got out of it? Hamas took over, and we're constantly at war in that region. So many money and so many blood, Jewish blood, has been spilled, in that region, in that area. So why is it that somehow now it's it's Israel somehow says, oh, okay, no problem. We could you know we could give it to the U.S. So it's very, for me, it's very interesting how accepting the Israelis are about this, in terms from the right.
But not all Israelis on the right. Like I have friends who are on the right who did not vote for Netanyahu. They voted all for Ben Gvir. They're appalled. They said that, and I agree with them. They said that the US taking over Gaza, first of all, it's a wrapped up two-state solution. And we'll talk about how basically Trump and Netanyahu could be appeasing the Saudis in doing that deal. Second of all, they said that it's another form of colonialism if the US takes over a Jewish property that we've had since 145 BC. Like I understand, like if we, let's say, conquered Gaza 100 years ago, I'm just throwing out a number, fine. It doesn't mean that much to us. Let it go. That's it. But then again, letting go of Gaza to the US. Okay, so let's talk about all the different layers here. So I do have pros for the deal. Like you said, I agree that Trump's negotiation skills are bar none. He throws out the most outlandish deals. By the way, it's not the most outlandish deal because El-Sisi, the prime minister of Egypt, he said to Bibi in 2014, even better. He offered an even better deal. He said, I'll sell the cyanide to you, move all of your Arabs there, and you'll have land buffers. And I was absolutely flabbergasted why Bibi ignored that deal.
Right.
Remember 2014, there were skirmishes already. Like it was building up to the 2021 war with Hamas and El-Sisi. And I think we also have to talk about El-Sisi at some point. Like everyone's like, oh, like they should take back their nationals, this and that. But El-Sisi worked with Israel. Oh, hello? Okay, so with LCC is that everyone's like, oh, like Egypt should take back their nationals. Well, Sisi worked with Israel to enact a coup against the Muslim Brotherhood terrorist Morsi. And remember what happened in 2012? Hamas killed 16 Egyptian soldiers. Morsi did nothing. Morsi was on Hamas's side. Let Hamas run amok all over the Sinai. So when Sisi comes in 2014, he had 3,000 buildings in Rafiah bombed to smithereens, and he had 1,200 tunnels in Rafiah completely destroyed. And he worked so hard to get rid of the Muslim Brotherhood in within Egypt, very large network there. And those that were not killed are now sitting in Egyptian prisons rotting away. So, we have to understand why CC is not so willing, to take back its nationals. Okay, so let's go back to all the layers of the deal. So, of course, it's great that Trump is throwing out these, ideas. Some of them were recycled to maybe get down to a middle. However, let's just talk about USA owning Gaza. Okay, so now Trump is in charge. Amazing. I voted for him proudly 3 times. Domestically, he's doing everything I would want and more. And even with Israel, right? Like we have Pam Bondi. She's starting. I don't know if you read. I think it's the 10-7. What's it called? Like not a fund. It's investigation to go after all of Hamas's financial tails all over the world. But let's say at some point, and this is going to happen, America's very volatile. So let's say in 12 years, the liberals come back to office. That's it, right? That this is not an international treaty that's being brokered. This is not changing Article 80. So, now fine, like let's say, we're in charge of Gaza and we're going to make sure that there are no terrorists there, even though that's going to be really impossible because again, it's not a normal refugee population. It's not like, oh, like for example, like they're comparing to Jews, right? It's not like Jews in Europe, right? We also were not indigenous to Europe. So like when we got, when we were under extermination, we were very happy to move anywhere, right? Like, okay, like we're gonna find refuge back in our homeland or in America or anywhere else, like anywhere but where we're being killed. We were not a terrorist population. This population is. So, first of all, America is not going to have American governance in Gaza if they're going to let back in the Arab occupiers. So, who's going to be their day to day governing body?
So, so what I've said earlier is from the, it's just the overall outlook on how this could actually happen. Uh, the details is still unknown.
Oh,
Trump,
and Mark, let me ask, let me add one thing, and I'm like not to interrupt you, but this is like to add to the conversation. So as of now, we don't even know whether it stands that it's a permanent resettlement, like he said on Tuesday, I believe it was Tuesday, or if it's a temporary resettlement of the Arab occupiers. So then we're operating on two very different planes of information here. So from your sources or from what you've gathered as of now, as of Thursday night, because we've had another day go by, uh, has there been any changes, or is it now still stands that it's a permit? Sorry, a temporary relocation.
right. So Trump himself has tweeted or posted on Truth Social, sorry, uh, the Gaza Strip would be turned over to the United States by Israel at the conclusion of fighting.
Right.
The Palestinians, people like Chuck Schumer,
Mhm. Who's a terrorist supporter?
this is what he wrote. People
Yeah.
like Chuck Schumer would have already been resettled in far safer and more beautiful communities. Just was a jab against Chuck Schumer, which I totally love it.
Me too.
Yeah, with new and modern homes in the region. They would actually have a chance to be happy, safe, and free. The US, working with great development teams from all over the world, would slowly and carefully begin the construction of what will become one of the greatest and most spectacular developments of its kind on Earth. No soldiers by the US
Right.
would be needed. Stability for the region would reign, which means that at the end of the day, I think what you're seeing is he throws something out. Then he gets all these feedbacks, negative and positive.
Mhm.
And then he somehow gradually throughout the days or weeks, you know, pulls a bit back and tries to, negotiate both with the audience and himself, right? He's negotiating with himself in a certain sense. So again, the details is really still developing on this issue. But at the end of the day, we have to understand that we've tried everything,
Oh,
and everything.
well, we actually haven't.
Well,
Uh,
I
yeah.
think we tried things that again, it's a very complicated place, right? Because there's so many things entangled in this issue that's called Gaza, and it's called the issue that's called two-state solution or Gaza. Uh, the Saudis, at the end of the day, want normalization with Israel. Um, this is what I
Uh,
know for a
Okay, so,
fact.
okay, so and I agree with you, but can you explain why the constant flip-flopping since the Jewish genocide? Like I can't keep up. Like one day they're arresting their citizens for saying free Palestine. I'm sure you saw that picture. There was a woman arrested in Mecca for
Yeah,
having the
I
terrorist flag.
yeah,
And then and then they're questioned like, oh, like we want peace with Israel. We don't care about the two-state solution. And then within a week, like literally back and forth, back and forth. They need geopolitical bipolar medication by this point. Like I cannot keep up.
again, so what I'm saying is Saudi Arabia, the Saudis are basically negotiating the same way as Trump is negotiating. Everyone is literally throwing in their um, most extreme ideas or most extreme value that they hold. In terms of Trump, literally, we're going to take over Gaza. We're going to make it great. We're going to resettle, 1.8 million, Arab occupiers, and we're going to make this so great. Okay, and then you got the Saudis going to the next extreme and doubling and tripling down on, we want a Palestinian state, two-state solution. We need Palestinian statehood, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Which again is by far doubling down, tripling down, and that's the other extreme. So I think what you're seeing is basically these two countries, the U.S. and the Saudis, or basically Trump and the Saudis, just negotiating through these statements, um, and it's all negotiation tactics. Again, so my opinion, the Saudis want a deal with Israel. There's no questions about it. They look at the UAE, they look at some of these countries, and they see that in terms of tech and in terms of so many different areas, um, the relationship with Israel has made them actually stronger. The UAE, again, one of the great leaders, in the Arab world, probably in the entire world, is the leader of the UAE, I must say. And his vision for his own country has come, before this entire, Palestinian issue, and he's done a deal with Israel, and they've benefited. Both countries has benefited tremendously from these deals, the Abraham Accords, and they're flourishing. They're flourishing, and it's not because of the oil. It's not because they're flourishing because they're just so ahead in being in a certain way modern, but still holding their Islamic values in a sense. And the Saudis are looking at that and said, oil is gonna, and in a sense, oil is gonna become cheaper, especially with Trump being in office. Energy is becoming cheaper. So the question is, how are we gonna make money, right? So they're looking to their neighbors and they see that others are benefiting with a relationship with Israel, and they want that too. They want that beneficial relationship in terms of tech, in terms of so many other business aspects that could help their own, their economy. Um, so they want normalization with Israel, and I think Israel wants definitely the normalization with Saudi Arabia. And I think once you get that, a lot of things, subside. Um, so this is really, again, between the lines, this is really a negotiation tactic by the Saudis with that statement. I don't think they're that extreme. I think the whole Gaza issue for a lot of these Arab nations has been like this constant issue that really is a bit of a stain for them, and it's a bit of I know they want it, and I know the Palestinian statehood has made billions of this issue has made billions of dollars, in terms of directing aid and funds to that place. But at the end of the day, it's not what they're going to put before their own people, I believe. And the Saudis understand that, and they want a deal. Now, how is this deal going to be reached? That's a different, that remains to be seen. But I believe you can see normalization with Saudis in the near future, with Israel and the Saudis. And so this entire Gaza situation, um, I think it's a great idea. It's a great idea if it's smartly implemented. Because at the end of the day, if this is seen as more as an economic issue rather than a political issue, I think things can start, things can start moving in a positive direction. Now, does it mean Israel is gonna get out of like is gonna get 100% of what they want? It doesn't mean you know the entire other Arab nations are gonna get. There's gonna be massive backlash. And there's also the technical issues. Hamas, are they going to just allow this to happen? Are they going to allow 1.8 million refugees or whatever the number is to just resettle? And in terms of resettling, there's a lot of people currently living in Gaza that want to get out of there. There's no questions about it. David Friedman alluded to that issue, I think yesterday, that people really don't know the issue of Gaza. And the people that really don't know about that issue don't really understand that it might be more simpler than it is. And people, a lot of people want to get out of there. They don't want to live there. And you know, if you look at historically, these people, weren't Israelis to begin with. Like these people come from Jordan, Egypt,
They
and
don't
many
come from
other and many other
Mark,
countries.
Mark. They don't
Anyways,
come from Jordan. Most of them are Egyptians, and the rest were former Israeli Arabs who came from 25 different Muslim nations. None of them were from Israel East at all.
yeah, even Jordanians are refugees.
No one's a refugee. First of all, I think we have
Yeah,
to
yeah, yeah.
stop that
But it's
terminology.
you know what I mean.
There are Arab occupiers. Refugees are those who are targeted in a war for no reason and then
Yeah,
have to be resettled.
right.
Where are the refugees?
Yeah, yeah. But even in Jordan, it's there's the Jordanians. From where does Jordanians come from?
65% are former Israeli Arabs, and most Israeli Arabs came to Israel when? Between the world wars, number one. Number two, the former Israeli Arabs who fled to Jordan, and let's stop even calling it Jordan, Israel East, for those of us who are Zionists. They only, like, again, fled to Israel East between
Yeah.
1947-48 to help the Arab armies kill Jews faster. That's 65% of those who live there. 35% are Bedouins, and the Bedouins in Israel East and Israel and even the Sinai are genetic Jews. And they were Jews who lived in the Hijaz. The first cohort went out there in after 586 BC, after the destruction of the first temple, because they thought that's it, Judea is done and over with. And then the next cohort to join them were a lot of the Bar Kokhba rebels after 136 AD. They didn't want to live under the yoke of the Roman Empire. And together they formed these clans of thousands of Jews per clan. And there were 12 clans and one. And so just to add, for our listening audience, when Jews first entered the Hijaz, which is in the Arabian Peninsula, they were welcomed with open arms because pagan Arabs, when they were pagans, had no problem with Jews. Great trading partners, absolutely integrated into society. And so Muhammad, once he invented a new religion, he was so close with Jews, he was convinced that the Jews were all going to convert to his new religion. Then a war began, and so one Jewish clan was completely exterminated. Two were expelled, but nine stayed behind. And when we say clan, again, thousands of people, right? And so nine clans stayed behind, assimilated. And some of those who assimilated, but they intermarried within each other. That's how they retained the Jewish genetics. Some made their way back home. And what was stolen from Israel by Churchill in 1922 and renamed to Jordan, that was all part of Palestine. That was all Israel. So they lived there. Some lived in the Negev. Some made their way over even to Gaza. And that's Jordan. Like, I remember being in Jordan in 2022, and there was such a marked difference between how the Bedouins talk about Israel versus the Arab occupiers. Have you been to Jordan yet?
No, I've not.
Okay, so if we had a Bedouin tour guide and we also had a Arab occupier tour guide. So the Bedouin tour guide, we were in Aqaba. So he looks over to Eilat, it's right across the Dead Sea, and he's talking so almost lovingly, like, like he's a Jew. And he's like, "Oh, that's Israel. I wish relations were better." Very, very positive, right? Like, not a negative word about Israel. Then you get the Arab occupier tour guide, and it's like, "Oh, like they bomb the Palestinians, and then this, that." It's completely different. So I want to push back a little bit. First of all, Ambassador Friedman, to me, I am completely disappointed in him. First of all, books, his book is riddled with anti-Semitic terminology. It's like nonstop Palestinians. Then he posts last week that Jordan is Palestine. But Jordan is part of Palestine. It is not Palestine. And I don't think that Ambassador Friedman, with all due at this point disrespect to him, I don't know what he was doing in the first Trump administration. I'm glad that he got the embassy moved. That was his raison d'etre, and I'm very grateful for that. But why didn't he explain to President Trump the rest of the history? Apparently President Trump only learned about the Golan Heights and how they belong to Israel. I think it was through Ari Berkowitz. What was the ambassador to Israel not explaining that to him? Or why didn't he explain the history of Gaza to him? That it's not just a business deal and we have two people, two lands. What the hell was he doing for 4 years? So when he then says that a lot of quote unquote, or I'm going to call them what they are, a lot of Arab occupiers want to leave Gaza, that's actually not true. So he's not looking like I see, because I follow Arab media. And when I say Arab media, like, I mean videos literally from Gaza, from everyday Gazans. I'm not talking about Hamas propaganda videos. They're tripling down, Mark, tripling down that they're not leaving. So I don't know where Ambassador Friedman's getting his information from.
you know, there's it's not just Ambassador Friedman. There is this notion that a lot of people want to get out of there. Again, a few 100,000 people uh, definitely definitely want to stay. They definitely want to double down. But again, at the end of the day, we got to understand realistically what can be done and what cannot be done. And for Israel, the past 20 years did not work. It just did not work for Israel. It cannot continue. This cannot go on. So, the question is, what do we do to solve this issue once and for all? At the end of the day, Hamas is really a bunch of people that are being held in tunnels, not being held, but being hidden in tunnels. And then they come out when there's a ceasefire and parade around, with a few thousand people. There's no way of governing that place. There's no way of there. I've been looking at this problem and I don't see a solution that every party is gonna really agree to, right? Um, because Israel, in a sense, just go in and take territory. Why can't they do that? And they should have done it a long time ago, I believe. They should have never gone out of Gaza. It was one of the most horrific and atrocious of policy, domestic policy that Israel's ever done.
And Gaza still legally belongs to Israel anyway, so there's no
Yeah,
taking over.
yeah. There's no there's no. I've never seen a treaty that says that Gaza doesn't belong to Israel.
It's
So
actually upheld through Article 80 of the UN Charter because all the League of Nations, I know you know this, just like for those who might not, all League of Nations treaties were passed down to the UN through Article 80. So when Ariel Sharon criminally disengaged from Gaza, did not change the international treaty.
yeah, so at the end of the day, why wouldn't Israel just go in and take the land, right?
Right. Well, then why
So
is it waiting for America?
right. So if it's accepted for the U.S. to take that land, why wouldn't Israel take that land? So at the end of the day, really, does Israel really want to take Gaza? I've been always asking that question. If and you've got all these anti-Semites, all these things. Yeah, Israel has it's the greater plan of the bigger the they call it like the big like the big Israel or whatever.
The greater Israel plan,
Great, yeah, the
which
greater
is
Israel.
just to go back to our actual Jewish homeland that was codified by 51 member states of the League of Nations in 1922. I mean, 1920, before Churchill stole 78% of our homeland and turned the mandate into an illegal occupation. So we're not going back to Greater Israel. Although I do have to say this, and I know you're going to disagree because I know you're observant, but there's some maps out there that have the historical map of Israel completely exaggerated. Like the actual Israel never went up to now Lebanon, completely north. It never went down to Sinai. Sinai historically was never part of Israel. So some maps out there are a little bit out of bounds. But when we're talking about
Yeah,
Gaza,
there's
yeah, but when we're talking about Gaza, Israel East, Golan Heights, and by the way, southern Lebanon also historically belongs to Israel. It was stolen by the French in 1920. So we are absolutely legally, can not even annex, right? Like I hate when they use the term annex, no, reclaim. So here's the problem. Like you said, and you brought up a good point. You said that not everyone's going to get what they want out of the deal. I just want to unwrap a lot of layers here. Okay, first of all, for those of us who have been to Dubai, I've been twice, and to Saudi Arabia, I've been to Saudi Arabia. In reality, and nothing against Israel, I'm a passionate Zionist. I can't say enough good things. And by the way, in terms of tech, even during this war, Israel, I think, IPO'd more than ever, right? Like in terms of their tech IPOs, even in the midst of the war. So we know that Israel is amazing at tech. However, if we're going to be honest, and I saw this firsthand, the UAE benefited from, of course, Israeli tech, but it's not that they were backwards before. They have great relations with Qatar. They have their own brilliant software engineers and tech companies. Israel was more of a cover for the UAE because like it is a Gulf state, and for decades it was known as being part of a not like a terrorist quad, but they wanted to soften their image. And then this is the inside information that I got, right? So one of their expansion strategies to soften their image, right? Like, well, we're Arabs, we're from the Gulf, we're not scary, we're open to everyone, was to initiate these deals. It wasn't actually for economic purposes, to be honest. And when you visit Saudi Arabia, especially Riyadh, it is a tech capital. I mean, Israel and the US and Europe are light years behind what Saudi Arabia actually looks like. And in terms of the oil that you mentioned, it's been a very long time since both Saudi Arabia and the UAE only relied on oil. Like right now, the UAE, 5% of their economy, of their GDP is oil. The rest is diversified. It's tech, it's real estate.
Began to diversify in the past few years.
Before that, even same thing with Saudi Arabia. Oil is at the bottom of their list right now. So the thing with Saudi Arabia is that, first of all, they have not so secret relations with Israel in terms of security. So that's where Saudi Arabia, in reality, needs Israel more than Israel needs Saudi Arabia because of security threats, as long as Iran is in the picture in its current form.
Sure.
But once, hopefully, and I really hope not even for ourselves, but for the Iranian people, who, for the most part, are not supportive of their terrorist regime, once that is solved, Saudi Arabia really does not need Israel for, for intelligence and all of that, because who's going to threaten Saudi Arabia? Like Qatar, yes, like they're against Qatar, but Qatar is not going to send missiles over to the Saudis. So the issue that I have, and some other Jews, even on the right in Israel that I'm talking to, are having with this deal is that, again, if we're talking about a permanent relocation of the Arab occupiers, then fine. Whatever negotiation Israel and the US come together, like maybe I don't know. But then again, like, why would the US even want to be in Gaza, right? Like, and then when we're talking about also, and I know I'm diverting here a little bit, Trump ran on an America First platform, right? So already, like, we know we can't have our military there. That would never fly. Even what's his name, Joey Jones on Fox News says, like, like, I'm pro-Israel, but like I don't want my men going into Gaza detonating IEDs and being killed. So we know that Israel's going to do the heavy lifting militarily to detonate Gaza, right?
Militarized.
The militarize, right? And all of the dangerous ways that that's going to entail, by the way, like we have to detonate bombs, unexploded bombs, all of that. But okay, so then what? Like to have a Dubai in Gaza? Like, by the way, so the Qatar and Saudi Arabia built up beautiful Gaza for those Arab occupiers. So what Trump is also saying, and I completely disagree with this, and also other people I disagree with, what they're saying is like, okay, so if we only temporarily move the Gazans out of the way while, I mean, not Gaza, the Arab occupiers out of the way, then we rebuild Gaza, then they're invited back in. And then that's it, they're going to be denazified. That's also the language that's being used. They're not going to be denazified because of economic improvements, because Gaza before the war looked nicer than 99% of Tel Aviv. It really did. Like if you anyone who's seen videos that the
Yeah.
that the terrorists were that the terrorist supporters were posting in the last year, they're saying like, oh, before and after, this is what my apartment looked like, and this and that. It was absolutely gorgeous. So economics is not a problem. It's Hamas. And everyone thinks, okay, so we're going to oust Hamas from the Gaza Strip. Okay, so two problems. Great. So then Hamas is going to move even further into Judea and Samaria, where they already have a foothold. 90% of the Arab occupiers in Judea and Samaria, very pro Hamas. Why has Abbas not held elections in what, 18, 19 years. Yes, he's a dictator, but also he knows he would lose elections to Hamas. So as a power move, he is not holding those elections. So you have a hornet's nest in Judea and Samaria. So Hamas is just going to triple, quadruple down there. I think that terrorist attacks, if this plan were, let's say, to go through, I'm just thinking more long term. So if Israel does not rip up the terrorist Oslo Accords and reclaim Judea and Samaria first, before even going through with any Gaza plan, we're going to have another genocide coming out of Judea and Samaria, which already like they're it's being talked about, like, you know, something to really watch for. You know that the IDF is very much increasing its activity in Jenin, Ramallah, all over the place there. So the question is this. So again, a permanent relocation, we're in the clear. A temporary relocation, and that's where I think it's going, because again, echoing what you said, if we get Saudi Arabia involved in this, and Trump, for whatever reason, like that's his goal, right? Like that's his cherry on top for the Abraham Accords. We have to get Saudi Arabia. We have to get Saudi Arabia. And then you have Bibi, who I don't know is not thinking clearly. He also wants Saudi Arabia included in a deal where, again, like if Israel reclaims Gaza and if Israel reclaims Judea and Samaria, Israel does not need Saudi Arabia. It really doesn't. Like, what is Saudi Arabia going to do? Like, attack Israel? It's not. Because again, it has the status quo. We have 3,000 Jews living in Saudi Arabia. They have kingdom protection. They have contracts with Israeli security firms. So I think it's fine to have that status quo. Have these covert, open, or actually not covert relations with Israel, you know, by the Saudi kingdom, and that's it. And don't demand any concessions from Israel, because again, like this is where I see it's happening. So any deal, again, like you said this so many times, and I agree, in any deal, Israel is going to lose in some way. That's just going to happen, right? And so
Well,
we're
depends.
so like, okay, so in what
This
capacity?
is how I look at it.
Oh, yeah, so Mark, so in what capacity do you see the Saudis agreeing to a deal with Israel without a temporary relocation of the occupiers and accepting a permanent relocation? Because I'm not seeing that.
So this is how I look at it.
Mhm.
Um, let's forget about the Saudis for a second.
Okay.
Let's talk about the Israelis and the US.
Wait, before we do, can you also explain? Okay, let's say even temporary relocation. How do we get temporary relocation to Egypt and to Jordan? Because what about a Qatari influence? What if Jordan wakes up and says, you know, F you, America, whatever aid you give me, Qatar, terrorist Qatar is gonna triple that amount. And Qatar honestly has trillions of dollars more than we do to spend on whatever terrorist supporters they would like.
I think again, I think some of us are looking, and rightfully so, as a political issue.
Yeah.
Trump is looking Trump is looking at it as an economic issue. I think at the end of the day, what happened past,
But economics, right? But economics, we have seen, does not solve terrorism.
we're not talking about terrorism currently, and here's why.
Okay.
Um, at the end of the day, the Arab world is getting smarter to the issue that Gaza is basically a place where you just throw your money away and nothing really happens. And I think where Trump comes in, and Trump understands how the real world works, and in terms of a business perspective, and he says to the Arab world, listen, we can keep this up, back and forth. Israel's going to crush Hamas. Um, I can allow Israel to do whatever they want in the Gaza. I don't care even if they take the entire Gaza. I can also um, completely strip away any um, any control, which they really don't have too much, but any control that these Arab occupiers have in Judea and Samaria, and give completely and acknowledge control, Israel's control on these territories. I can do that all. Like Israel has my full backing
And
in
is
doing
that
that
okay? So
all.
let me ask you a question. Is that reversible? So let's say, and I hate that we even have to use language like allow as if Israel's some vassal state
True,
of the US.
true. It's
Israel's
sad.
sovereign,
It's
right?
sad, but we live in the realistic world, right? It's
No,
very sad.
well, but I think it's also how Israeli leaders allow themselves
Of
to be
course,
switched
we
around.
honored this position, and we honored this position because Israeli leaders allowed themselves. We gave back Hebron. We gave back. When I say
Excuse me. When we say we,
yeah, I mean Israel.
Netanyahu,
Yeah,
Netanyahu
yeah,
gave
yeah, yeah. Same thing.
97%.
100%. Um, I've been so many times there, and I've
Yeah.
studied there for nearly 10 years.
Did
So
you see, by the way, did you see all of the gorgeous houses that the Muslims have in Hebron and how the Jews live there in poverty?
yeah, so again, I've said it so many times, that it's because of Israeli leadership. Like Israelis love to have scapegoats, right? The EU is to blame. The US is to blame. Everyone is to blame. Somehow you criticize Israel and their leadership. Somehow you become an anti-Semite. You're obsessed with Israel. The truth is, in every aspect, Israel's is in a weak position, because of its leadership and because of the policies they had, not just
Exactly.
for now,
Mhm.
but for decades. And Israel's got to wake up and take what's rightfully theirs. And they don't.
And elect a Mizrahi Jew who has balls.
Exactly. And
Enough with the Ashkenazim.
yeah, well, as an Ashkenazi, I agree with that.
Yeah,
Um,
me too.
yeah. So at the end of the day, there has to be some kind of responsibility that Israel takes for their failed policies.
Right.
But somehow the U.S., Trump wants to make a deal. Trump betrayed Israel. The EU does that. Well, I know Europe is full of anti-Semites, and I understand. But again, it's not. There people don't have to love Israel. Just like I don't have to love Sweden or Norway or the UK or Germany. So the constant notion that everyone needs to support me and
Mhm.
needs to support us, and if they don't do ABC, then well, are you an anti-Semite? Well, no, they have different politics than you do. Well, some do
And
it because they hate.
different no, and different populations. Like we see that Islam is conquering Europe, Western Europe, country by country. Those anti-Semites deserve it. So, like, I mean, have fun being like raped by the Islamists and not having any protection, against that. But they want to be weak and accepting of them. But that's the thing. Like, if you look at who's the new libtard leader in the UK? Sturmer, Keith Sturmer,
Yeah,
something like
Kirsten.
your Sturmer.
Yeah.
Okay, so his population is rising Muslim. So of course he's not going to be pro-Israel. It's not good for his base. His base is is all Islamists.
And you see it like, and you see it like in every instance. You see it like in everywhere. Um, so the constant blame game
And
needs
the
to.
constant and also the constant need, like this is what I say all the time. The need, the Jewish need or the Israeli need to be liked, or actually let's say Jewish, the Jewish need to be liked by the world, the tikkun olam disease, as I call it,
Yeah,
that's what cripples Israel's strength.
yeah.
Because if it didn't care what the world, and by the way, like the Arab world would get on board with Israel's actions in Gaza that they needed to be taken, yeah, Israel would be a pariah for 5 years. And then they would get a phone call from Saudi Arabia in 5 years. Thank you for taking care of it because we didn't want to take care of that problem. And you made our life easier. So the thing is, my question to you in terms of policy, right? So let's go back to reality. Unfortunately, we do have a weak leader in Israel who wanted to be liked by the world and he didn't continue the siege. And I don't blame Trump. I really don't. It's not Trump's problem. Trump, he's president, he's great friends with Israel.
The
He's
United
trying
States.
his best. It's Israel's fault for going around the world, say Israel, Netanyahu, in front of the UN. Oh, we're now going to reoccupy Gaza. As soon as you see those words reoccupy, the reason, like, we can't even blame non-Jews. This is the whole point of taking back the narrative. I say, like, my main audience is Jews. So I say to Jews, don't blame non-Jews for anti-Semitism if you're contributing it to yourself. If you're saying Palestinians, if you're saying Palestine, like just today on the Five, Jessica Tarloff, a liberal, right? She's a Jew. She's saying Palestine. So the non-Jews on the panel, who are all pro-Israel, they hear, aha, there's Israel and there's Palestine. There's Jews and Palestinians. There we go. That's the false narrative. So it puts, and I know you know this. I'm just sharing this with the audience who might not. As soon as we say Israel and Palestine, Jews and Palestinians, that's it. We cannot blame anti-Semitism. We are literally feeding the anti-Semitic lies, right? That we swooped down, we're not indigenous, we kicked out the Arabs, even though we didn't. Where is the leader in a private conversation with Trump, right? They're great friends. It takes literally 10 minutes to explain the history of Gaza, to explain the history of why Jews are indigenous. Not Trump's job to know. Like when Caroline, right? When Caroline Levitt goes up to the podium and someone asks her a really good question, who owns Gaza? She didn't know, but she's at every meeting with Trump, obviously with Netanyahu. Where was Netanyahu to educate President Trump and say, we legally own Gaza? Article 80 literally, it takes less than 5 minutes. So poor Caroline Levitt is stuck there, and she doesn't know. So she's like, Hamas is in charge of Gaza. So nowhere is Israel in the conversation. And then she says, oh, Gaza is a demolition site. It's dangerous for Palestinians. So everything is basically blaming Israel. It's like, oh, look what Israel did to Gaza. Now we have to help the Arab occupiers. So we at a high level need to come in and literally correct the narrative that's out there. So, okay, so going back to policies, right? And like being second fiddle or like, licking America's ass basically, from a policy standpoint. So fine, let's say Trump goes through with a deal, it's favorable to Israel, stars across the board. Let's say 12 years later, liberals come back into office. Could they reverse any of those decisions?
No, why should they? Like if
Well,
it's
I mean, I'm thinking if they could.
no, if it's successful, this is going to be done in a proper and a legal way, of course. And again, legalities, subject to what really can be done to begin with, of course.
Well, legally, isn't Israel in the right? I mean, it's like if they look back to again Article 80, all of Judea and Samaria is legally Israel's, all of Gaza is legally Israel's. What would not be legal if we shoved Arab occupiers to the Sinai, which is not part of Israel, never was, but Sisi had offered for Israel to buy the land. So if it's a purchase, that's fine. But and what about that? Like, what did you think about that offer to, let's say, would CC agreed to sell the Sinai?
Well, I don't, I don't really believe Sisi wants to sell the sign. I think they're
I mean, he
actually
offered in 2014.
well, 2014 is 2014. We're 10 years
Yeah.
later, and now he's militarizing the Sinai. Actually,
Oh, he is. Yeah, because back then he said it's like a lawless piece. Like he couldn't control it back then, and he wanted an economic injection into the Sinai because
when did Morsi get out of power?
I'm sorry.
When did Mohammed Morsi get out of power?
In 2014, it was a coup. And actually, I'm not going to give too many details. You probably know some of the details, but someone I know very well is Egyptian. He worked with Mossad
Okay.
to help facilitate that coup. So that's all I'm going to say. So, everyone who doesn't know that, like they think like, oh, why are we sending military aid to Egypt? Is Egypt going to use it on Israel? Like, no, like Sisi is not going to attack Israel at all. Like Sisi needs the military against its own, against
But
its.
but but, he, but we've seen this the Sinai being militarized by Egypt, which is by the way I think it, it's probably um, that's not part of the agreement. I think that's really sort of breaking the
Well,
agreement.
that's their
Yeah.
own sovereign decision because the Sinai.
Well, the agreement is that the Sinai Desert, the Sinai does not get militarized by any, not by Egypt, and not by Israel.
Oh,
Uh,
by the
but
79,
nonetheless, what?
79 agreement.
Yeah. But nonetheless, but nonetheless, so in that regard, I don't know if it's impossible. But again, um, you know, let's conclude this issue with the details are still unknown, and there's multiple ways how to achieve some of the goals. There's definitely everyone agrees something has to change. Israel cannot live like this.
Mhm.
The people surrounding both Egypt, and the surrounding areas are, in a certain sense, sick and tired of sending constant aid of billions of dollars. Also, Gaza will take at least a decade to, get back, I don't know, 100%, but definitely to redevelop and reconstruct this place, probably costing billions of
I mean,
dollars.
Qatar, okay, so what about what Qatar said? So, like in the middle of last year, they said, oh,
Yeah,
no matter what Israel does to Gaza, we got you. They
I
were
think
given
what
endless
you,
money.
yeah, but I think here's where U.S. leadership comes into play.
Okay.
The Qataris, at the end of the day, are very reliable on the U.S. They spend a bunch of money, billions of dollars, lobbying the U.S. In terms of foreign policy. Um, that's why nothing has been done to Qatar in a sense that,
Well, because we also have a base there.
well, we do. Well, what happens if the U.S. moves that base into Gaza?
Okay, so that's another thing. So that's what a lot of people on the right, and I kind of agree with them. So let's okay, again, we're just doing game day scenarios here. So let's say America builds a base in Gaza. American bases around the world, especially in the Middle East, are extremely vulnerable to terrorist attacks. And who do we have up north of Gaza? I mean, up north of Israel right now, we have ISIS. When Assad fell, he didn't fall to benevolent rulers. They fell to a Turkish-backed ISIS group, and they rule like ISIS. And of course, it's Takia. Remember, he said, oh, we're not going to touch Israel. But then there are videos literally of his fighters promising that we're going to retake Jerusalem. So again, Takia, Takia, Takia. So we don't have friends up in Syria. Uh, ISIS, by the way, overall is on the rise in North Africa. So here you have a US base. So I just, and I also don't see Israelis agreeing to have an American base right there because what if, God forbid, something happens? Doesn't Israel want to take care of that and not America? I,
Yes.
I just, I just think it's going to be horrible for Jews all over because, especially in the U.S., let's say one, God forbid, one American dies in Israel, like that's it, right? It's like, oh my gosh, like the weak Jews, they can't do anything themselves. We have to come and rescue. I
So,
mean, that's bullshit, but that's going to be how it's going to be. Told.
so again, I think at the end of the day, the details are still unknown. And in terms of America First, I've I've looked into it, and well, if the U.S. really owns Gaza as a U.S. territory, then that's really America First because now it's ours. In a certain sense, if we actually if we actually spend money on Gaza, I want a tax break. I want a tax system, a
Mhm.
tax-based system that brings that all the money that is being done and made in Gaza should be
I was so sorry. We didn't
taxed,
get that.
go to U.S. coffers.
Mhm.
What I've said is, you know, if we spend any money, not even sending troops to Gaza, but just spend money, that's also against the America First ideology, the America First movement. But if it's a U.S. territory, um, all taxes should go to U.S. coffers, right?
Mhm.
at the end of the day, we this needs to be, again, to conclude, the, as I've started, the this is something that Trump just went and literally burst something out, and everyone, you know, tried putting their 2 cents, negative or positive. But everyone tried to say something about that. This is what he wants, right? It's brilliant.
No, and I
You
agree. I
know,
agree on that. I agree on that. I think it's good to move the needle forward. So his bombastic, and again, it's not really
yeah.
bombastic. Like again, like I've been calling for land buffer.
Because what's the alternative, right? What was the alternative up until now? Up until this discussion, we went from talking about, you know, getting, Gaza demilitarized, and trying to see if someone can govern, not Israel. Like, we went from discussion, and I'm not talking about, the Zionism is, and what the real right is. I'm saying realistically, the international community went from talking about, okay, what's the future of Gaza? Is Hamas staying in power? Are they going out of power? Who are we replacing Hamas with? From that to literally, does the U.S. take over Gaza? It's like we've moved the needle, away from, a possible policy, a possible, you know, two-state solution, let's say, right?
Mhm.
Israel, Palestinian, Abbas, his party, maybe taking over. Right? We gone from that to actual, debating and discussing. Okay, so how's this plan of Trump going to work, right? And how? So I think at the end of the day, that's a positive, because that conversation at least didn't work, and it will never work. Um,
But do you think
you
Bibi has,
know,
but do you think Bibi or
Netanyahu,
whoever, oh, I'm sorry. I think you're,
Netanyahu himself propped up Hamas throughout the years through.
oh, hello? Mark, I think your audio is a little bit off. Okay. So basically, my question to you is, are you back? I think we're just having a bit of an audio issue right now. Oh, Mark, are you able to hear me?
Yeah, we're having like internet. Yes, I am.
Okay, great. So my question is this. Okay,
Yes, I
so
am. Do you hear
oh,
me?
okay. Yes. So we still haven't addressed the whole Fatah issue. So again, if it's a permanent relocation of the Arab occupiers, great. I have no problem with this deal. Like America can own it. If Israel accepts, I don't know. I mean, it's still colonialism, by the way. It's still colonialism of Judean territory. But fine if Israel wants to give up Gaza, completely to the US. But let's say it's not a permanent relocation and it's looking right now like it's a temporary relocation and the US owns Gaza. The US is again like not going to govern these Arab occupiers. They're going to get someone else to govern. And so it's still would be the same conversation that would be Fatah, they're terrorists, or any other Arab, they're still governing terrorists. So my fear, and this is what a lot of people fear too, who I've talked to on the right, is that Gaza would be rebuilt for a population that still has these terrorist tendencies. You're never going to denazify that population, right? It's not like even denazifying Germany post World War II. Yes, they had 2,000 years of Christian anti-Semitism, which obviously culminated in the Holocaust. But in terms of virulent, propaganda, that was less than 10 years. Here, you've had close to 80. So there's no way to deprogram these Nazis that we have living next to Israel, by or part of Israel actually. So what are you going to do? So what they're going to be rewarded then with this glitzy new Gaza? Their leaders are still, or whoever is going to be leading them, is going to be sharing their same, you know what I mean? So what we see with Islam, with Muslims, a lot of it is a weeding game, right? Like, look, the Muslim Brotherhood started in 1928, morphed into Fatah, morphed into Hamas, Islamic Jihad, all of them. They're not going to be going away. So, like when you said, like, oh, Hamas is hiding in the tunnels, they're not. Hamas is part of that 1.8 million Arab occupiers. It's in every single one of them. So that's the thing. It's like 800 plus soldiers Israel lost. And then for what? You know, for America to take over Gaza, to let back in the Arab occupiers at a certain date later on, and then nothing is guaranteed. So either we have a land buffer completely, or we don't, and something's going to erupt in the next decade or so. So that's where I personally stand.
Yeah, no, again, in every deal pertaining to Gaza, Israel will have to have probably the last say in what is going to end up happening because their security is in jeopardy. I'm glad that there's new conversations
Mhm.
before. It's historic. It's historic even to think about a U.S. president in the face of international community to actually say the words a resettlement from Gaza. It's
No,
never,
and that I agree with. Yeah.
the conversation is a different conversation. The needle has been, the line has been pushed. And I think it's a positive for that. Whatever the deal might end up happening, that will really be up to Israel in a sense. Does this deal, whatever it may be, threaten our security and our existence? If it does, it's a no. If it does, then let's work on it and let's make it the best deal. And at the end of the day, we cannot have Israel cannot have missiles flying every 3 years, every two
Or
years,
tunnels
another one,
or anything.
tunnels,
Right.
another slaughter, another 10-7. We can, Israel cannot allow that to happen. Um, but there's two things here. Israel needs to get much tougher in what they really want with that territory because I think a lot of people there are just confused. Is it ours? Is it not ours? Is it like there's so many you know there's so many angles and where everyone looks at this as, oh, maybe we do that, oh, maybe we do that, like right now.
You know,
I want
I would be more amendable to this even suggestion if Israel would say, and again, like obviously this is too soon, but if Israel would say, we're not doing anything with Gaza in terms of ownership or anything like that until the Oslo terrorist accords are going to be completely uh dissolved, right? Like we're gonna because that's the thing, you know, you can get rid of Gaza all you want,
that's the real
right? But you still have that hornet's nest in Judea and Samaria that
yeah,
you
Judea-Samaria is a problem, and
and you know, and Mark, you know that it's going to quadruple
yeah,
with terrorist activity if all of that is going to go on in Gaza. That's even a temporary resettlement.
right.
So that's what Israel. And again, it's not Trump's job to think about it. He's not in charge of Judea and Samaria. He's not the president of Israel. And that's the thing. It's like I think like too many Jews look at Trump like, okay, so you know, we're firing on all cylinders here in the US. Now take care of us too. Trump is the president of the US, not of Israel.
Exactly.
That's
That's
the thing.
right.
So it's
We in terms of an American Jew, and a lot of people are conflicting. An American Jew within the America First movement. How does it really look like? I guess I have to really write a book about that. An American Jew, I would say, foremost, yeah, we're Jewish, and we do have an emotional connection to that land. It is what it is. But at the end of the day, um, as an American, my initial interest needs to be where I live, where my family lives, where I bring up my children. And, I got to make sure that the future where I am is safe, secured, and prosperous. Because, you know, a prosperous America, a more secured America, a more stable America is great for Jewish Americans and for Israel. It's great for everyone. Then comes the issue about, okay, now what about Israel, right? And I think we cannot conflate these two, um, because at the end of the day, Israel is a sovereign nation, last I checked, and they have to make their own decisions. And a lot of the right in the America First movement, and people conflate that like, oh, anti-Semitic. There's a lot of people that think, among the right is we don't care what Israel really does as long
Leave
as
us
the
out of it.
United States. What?
Leave us out of it. That's what they want. They're
Yeah,
like, yeah.
just take care of business and just just leave us out of it, and we really have no problem. So again, we got to be very careful. Um, y- there's a lot, we can go into anti-Semitism in the United States, and from there's a the growing phase of anti-Semitism among the right in a certain
I mean,
sense.
I actually disagree with that because libertarians is where anti-Semitism lives on the right, but they're not Republicans. They're libertarians. They are their own party
They
that
true.
happened to morph into the MAGA movement, but we don't claim them.
Yes, we've become a very big movement.
Yeah.
We've got RFK, we've got Tulsi Gabbard, we've got all these Democrats that want really
Oh, wait,
less.
can we, Mark, let me ask you a question. Can we trust Tulsi?
Yes,
Do you think she's anti-Israel or pro? And why did she meet with Assad?
Nancy Pelosi also met with Assad.
Well, she's also pro-terrorist. So,
Well, she's been here and there, but I think the thing of Tulsi is we have to look everyone in a sense of in an American lens. We cannot look at our politician with an Israeli lens. I've said it to so many. Like again, we keep
oh no, no, I said it from an American lens because Syria is not our ally. So why
well,
did you go over?
well, well.
Same thing with McCain.
The
Like
truth is,
McCain went over with the Muslim Brotherhood when he was elected.
the truth is, the United States have supported our own enemies. Supported Al Qaeda, multiple. We're currently supporting Al Qaeda in Syria, and that started within the Obama years. Um, and they literally brought down Assad. My whole entire notion about Assad was, uh, at the end of the day, it's the devil that you know and the
Mhm.
devil that you don't know. And for me,
I
as
agree with
getting Assad out is a huge problem. I think it's not that simple. We do have currently a ruthless person that really danced on the day of 9/11, um, and is basically leading in Iraq the Al Qaeda movement, and now he's in Syria. So,
and Turkey obviously is backing him, and that's the thing. So
right.
I think Turkey is going to pose such a headache for Trump in the next 3.5 years that it's
See
not
about
going
that. Yeah, maybe. Well, or maybe not. We'll see about that. But definitely, Turkey wants these. Turkey has like the Turkish president over there.
or Erdogan. I'm telling you this: Turkey's the next Iran.
Well, he wants to make this as the Ottoman Empire. He has this dream of recreating the Ottoman Empire in a certain sense. But yeah, it might be a huge problem. I've written about it, and a lot of people can, but you're pro Assad. No, I'm not pro Assad. I'm just realistically looking at the picture and seeing that Turkey's just coming in. And Turkey has dreams too. He's against the Kurdish, and he's not a friend of Israel. So that's gonna remain. Now you've got this like between Turkey and Al Qaeda, so you got to really pick between those two. It's an entire mess. The fall of Assad has created an entire mess, I believe. So am I pro Assad by suggesting that? No, I'm not. I'm realistic. And Tulsi is the same in a sense that she understands by Al Qaeda. And that's why she literally went into the military, and at great risk. And she had some, she served, and somehow what she found out, rightfully so, is as how our government and our intelligence community are corrupt, especially in the Middle East. We're not fighting our enemies. Every enemy becomes a friend when we get a new enemy. It's just an entire puzzle. It's an entire chess game. And the U.S. itself cannot be trusted in that particular protecting.
Mhm.
9/11 happens. Al Qaeda is our enemy. Now Al Qaeda is our friend against Assad. It's like we are addicted to regime change. Wait and see. Jelani is going to get so extreme that the U.S. will try to topple that. Again, I'm
Mhm.
not saying that's going to happen, but this is how we've conducted ourselves in the past years. And Tulsi is someone that realistically wants to understand, um, you know, the geopolitical consequences of our actions. So, she's not a Russian puppet. She's not a puppet of Assad. We can, we are allowed to meet people from, people that we are at war with or people that we disagree with to understand their side of the story. Because at the end of the day, we've done a lot of bad things. And
Yeah.
one of that is regime change in multiple
Iraq
countries, both in the EU.
Iraq was a complete mistake. Yeah.
Like again, we like Ukraine was a regime change in 2014.
Yeah, of course. Yeah.
We tried. It definitely had, it definitely succeeded. But now we have the Ukraine war 10 years later. It's again, so for Tulsi, it's so refreshing to see that we have someone now that is willing to ask the right questions. And the problem of our government, and we're seeing it with US aid right now,
Oh
for
yeah.
for for decades, we've been told that there is this government behind government. It's like there's this bureaucracy.
The deep state. Yeah.
And yeah, really, like, yeah, people said deep states like this conspiracy. It's
Nope.
really
It's
not
it's
this
literally
conspiracy,
there.
right?
And
Yes.
Elon and his young technocrats are uncovering it. Did you see? I don't know, it came out today that US aid sent something like $310 million to Hamas for a cement factory. So every single liberal who voted for Democrats in the past decades has Jewish blood on their hands because all
Yeah,
they voted for Hamas, plain and simple.
absolutely,
Yeah.
absolutely. No, so what we're finding out now is this: there's this unelected bureaucracy that is
Mhm.
just inside our government for many years, and it keeps growing and growing because people don't leave, people don't get fired, and the government gets bigger and bigger, and they literally just spend our money, and they spend it on regime change. They spend it on liberal leftist causes
Yeah.
around the world. And it's in decades. It's a $40 billion agency. And this is not what our forefathers and the U.S. Constitution was supposed to be. This is not what our government was supposed to be. The US government really just needs a few agencies. And it's the Department of Defense and probably even Department of Health, maybe a bit of, reined
Oh,
in the
and the external, I loved what Trump said. Remember, he said we have an internal revenue service. We need an external revenue
yeah.
service with all the
No,
tariffs.
it's
Yeah.
become so, and I want to know the Republicans that are involved with USA.
Mhm.
There's so many Republicans talking about cutting spending. You've allowed this to happen. You basically had, okay, the first Trump administration, you had the Bush, literally from 2010 to 2018. You lost the House in 2018, and held the Senate. So,
Yeah,
um,
between McConnell and the Bushes,
yeah,
they
nothing has been done.
not
Like,
only that, not only that, but like people don't understand, that ISIS literally was started because of Bush's incompetence in Iraq. They'd never had an exit strategy. They didn't understand the warring factions. It was completely their fault. I mean, of course, Obama dismissed it, called it a JV team. We can blame him, but it's on Bush. But okay, so we have to unfortunately wrap up. But before we
yeah,
go, I want to ask one question. So we were talking about, okay, so Israel needs to work with the Trump administration if this plan we're going to go through in terms of dissolving the Oslo terrorist accords because Judea and Samaria cannot be the status quo while anything is happening in Gaza. What about, and I just thought about this, do you think it's a good idea before we do anything in Gaza to topple the Iranian regime first? Then we take care of Gaza and Judea and Samaria.
um, again, the toppling of the Iranian regime.
Because the population there has been asking it for and and this is where I will blame Trump and I will blame Netanyahu for decades. When Trump was in office first term, Netanyahu was in office like his 44th term, years ago. The Iranian people reached out. They were desperate. They said, we'll like physically do that job. We need weapons and we need money. Provide both, and we will have your country safer, and they didn't, like the green movement, everyone's blaming Obama, but Trump didn't do anything. Yes, he killed Soleimani, which is like amazing, but like you still have the regime in place. So now the conversation is like, okay, well, we're going to strike the nuclear sites. I think we're way beyond striking nuclear sites. We need to get rid of the regime and free these poor people, and then make Israel safer, and then make the US safer. So where is that fitting in terms of toppling the Iran?
The only way you topple um, the mullahs in Iran is by massive economic strangle.
But haven't we done that before? Didn't Trump do that first?
Well, Trump did that, and
And the regime is
at
still
the
there.
end, and true, it survived because of a Biden administration. It was really
So you think so? I'm sorry,
last.
Mark.
It was
Mark,
really
I'm so
its
sorry.
last legs.
Mark, I'm sorry. So you think that had the election not been stolen second term, the regime would have toppled?
Or that, or they would rapidly done a deal with Trump, and Trump would not, Trump never, you know, Trump never really say, says, he never says in an instant, like let's say Iran, he would never get away from a deal. Like if he could actually make a deal, he would do that.
But do you see
Um,
the hardliners in Iran making a deal, or are they
yeah,
too?
I can see
Well, like what would that entail? Like what would make them step down?
that remains to be seen, but definitely about the nuclear. Again, I the you gotta understand in a certain sense. They they know. It's interesting in a lot of dictatorships or monarchs. There is the person in lead has total control of their people.
Mhm.
Iran
Does
Iran
not.
understands that they don't have control of their people.
Do you think they
Now,
do? Like, do they understand that 80% of their people, or it's not even their people, you know, that the Ayatollah is not Persian. He's not even the same ethnic background. So, but does he understand that the Iranians, most of them hate the regime, or is that over their head?
never seen any polling regarding that issue, and there's definitely a lot of people that hate the regime. Definitely,
80%, 80%.
definitely a lot of people. Maybe it's 80,
It
maybe
is
it's
80.
less.
Mm-hmm.
But let's say it's 80.
Mm-hmm.
If it's indeed 80%, we should have seen something happening by now.
But that's the
Right?
thing. They need the weapons and they need the money. Like they don't
Well,
have that.
yes and no. Again, at the end of the day, I think what for America, right? As an America First supporter myself, we have to be realistic, right? What poses a threat to the United States when we're talking about Iran? What is really the threat?
The nuclear, obviously.
So if we can get that solved, then they don't pose a threat. So on that issue, for our interest, getting getting Iran to the table on a real nuclear deal, not that phony nuclear deal that Obama made, but
Right.
a real nuclear deal, that would be the issue concerning US interests. Regime change and, outright war, I don't think anyone currently in the US will support that. It's not
But
going
why
to
not? No,
happen.
right. But why not fund the green movement? Like again, like just get the weapons and the money to the people. Let the people take care of it. Like that's what they've been asking for.
Well,
They're like, no American booster.
listen, maybe, maybe we could reconstruct US aid in a sense that we stop
US
all funding.
US to Iran.
We stop funding US. We stop funding anywhere, like
Right.
for the BS that they've funded, and we reconstruct that money, in terms of creating something, in Iran. Um, that would be that would be more to Western interest than
Right.
anything USA has done in the past, 40 years or whatever since the agency began. But again, I've spoken about this in the last episode. Um, I am very reluctant when it comes to war. Very. I am very reluctant when it comes to regime change.
But what? Okay. But
Regime
what
change
about when
always
it's
has to, in a certain sense, from the people.
no,
Um,
but that's what I mean, Mark. But it has to come from. But that's what the Iranians want. They said like we're gonna do it. We just need your weapons because they don't
I
have
understand.
weapons.
I understand. I understand. But at the end of the day, how is that going to work, right? You have to do that if you really want to go through that. It has to be in its weakest points of the regime.
Mhm.
Um, and we've been at that time in 2020. We've been at a time where the Iranian mullahs has um, have been on their last legs. There's nothing. There's
Well,
definitely some.
we can also work with the Kurds, right? Like we have an in with the Kurds in Kurdistan, and they have their Kurds that they deal with Iran, right? So all the minorities, like the
Well,
Balochis, the
yeah,
Kurds, the
yeah,
Druze.
look at Iraq, right? Look at Iraq. We've gone into Iraq, toppled Saddam Hussein.
But we were no, but
And
Mark, we went to Iraq uninvited. Here
yeah,
we're not.
true, but no, but what I'm saying is no, of course. What I'm trying to say is we've toppled Saddam Hussein. Now the Shias, the Iranians have massive influence in Iraq.
Mhm.
So then we go, oh, there's so much influence in Iraq from Iran. We got to topple Assad and Syria, right? To
Okay.
just balance it out. And this is what we're doing, right? We're literally going from country like um, we have we have Iran. Iran has too much power. Okay, so now it's time to give power to the Sunni alliance. The Sunni alliance become too extreme, so now we have to take away power and give it more to let's align with the Shiites. And this is a game.
So you're saying it would be complete domino effect if we even in the background get involved with regime change in
Well, maybe I would say let's try to get a nuclear deal with Iran,
Iran.
a real nuclear deal.
And take it one step
And
at a
let's see what happens with Iranian supreme leader, because I don't think he's gonna last long.
time. Okay.
In terms of health and
But he already named his son, and his son.
well, yes, maybe it's
Remember, you get rid of
there's
one.
gonna be there's gonna be change at the top.
Remember, you get rid of one rat in that part of the world, and another pops up.
True,
It
true,
Hezbollah's
true.
the same way.
But again, the supreme leader has been the the Iranian supreme leader has been the supreme leader for decades. Him literally dying, there's going to be a shakeup there, and it might lead to something big. I cannot predict that, but what I'm seeing between the lines,
Mhm,
that it's something that might happen. It might shake up, maybe to the positive,
mhm.
or just maybe to the negative. But I think regarding Iran is they cannot be allowed to have a nuclear weapon. That's definitely what we agree on. In terms of other things, I think we gotta wait. I think just like let the curse let it let's ride it out and see what the future holds regarding that issue in terms of where the leadership will be in 5 years from now, or maybe less.
But you're saying that even if we're, because again, like okay, like having nuclear weapons, but they have missiles. So are you confident that they're not going to be launching missiles at Israel now that Trump is in charge?
Believe we're going to see any missiles being launched from Iran at Israel. Um, I don't think so,
Mhm.
but you never know. Israel might just go and bomb the hell out of the Iranian nuclear facilities if Israel feels threatened or knows about a certain about nuclear material being made and created, and you know they do create this um, nuclear missiles and whatnot. But if that doesn't happen, so again, I don't know what's going to happen regarding Iran. Um, Definitely, they are less. They are weaker,
Mhm.
in a sense, militarily. I hope they're going to get weaker economically based on some of the Trump policies. Um, so if that happens, like Hamas is, in a certain sense, crushed.
Mhm.
Hezbollah is in a certain sense devastated. Assad is out of business. So
Well, I mean, I want to interject. So Hezbollah will never be out of business because Hezbollah, unfortunately, is entrenched
yeah, yeah.
Lebanese
But
government
again,
and the army and Hamas too, right? Like Hamas literally is the population in Judea and Samaria amongst the Arab
of
occupiers and
course,
in Gaza.
of
So
course,
I just want us to like be
yeah, of
very
course. But
transparent.
militarily, these proxies were largely devastated or largely destroyed in a way,
Mhm,
throughout the past year. And if Iran gets hit economically, and sanctions are getting you know popped up again, and there's so many other you know oil cannot be sold, and et cetera, et cetera. All these kinds of Trump policies, which was very successful in his first term regarding the policy towards Iran, because Iran was at its brink towards the end of the Trump administration. So that really begins with a very weaker Hezbollah and no Assad in Syria, and with a very weak, Hamas. I think we can see something happening naturally. Um, so we'll see what happens. Again, we're like the third week in this Trump administration. So many things have, foreign policy. There's so many things happening.
Well,
Uh,
that's the thing. So like I feel like, I love waking up these days. Well, I mean, I love waking up always, but especially these days. And the first thing I do, like I just like check my phone. I'm like, how many billions have we cut today?
yeah,
And who are we going after? So as an American first, again, we are just absolutely killing it on all fronts. Like I could not be more proud to be an American. But then, by the way, we still have hostages. So, like, okay, one last
yeah.
question. We don't have to go on like too long, but short answer, please. Do you think that Trump talking about this Gaza deal is going to harm our remaining hostages in Gaza right now who have not been uh, released yet?
I think the first phase will go through as planned. I think Hamas, in a way, was taken aback by what Trump said. Well, the basically, when I say Hamas, it's basically these two, three people that are still alive out of Gaza, right? Um, so they want to
But wait,
definitely.
wait, but don't they have a lot of the male hostages that are still alive? How many of them are there? Like 16 left?
Well, at the end of the day, there's going to be around 33 hostages that's going to be released, right? In the first phase.
Right. Eight of them have been murdered. But that's first phase. But the second phase, I thought that they were still male hostages that are still presumed to be alive. So is this going to potentially
Possible,
harm them?
possible. We'll see what phase two brings. Again,
And I
I,
know and I know Wyckoff wants to renegotiate phase two.
yeah. So this is what I said. And we spoke about this. People have to just take a chill, and we have to allow this deal to play out.
Mhm.
And I don't really think, and I've said it to you on multiple occasions, phase two, phase three for me is a no go.
Yeah, me too, obviously.
Uh, and I think from what we're seeing and what you know, we're listening between the lines, what Steve Witkoff said and what Trump, said here and there is, they're backing off of actually implementing phase two
Mhm.
as it's agreed. And they're saying like, oh, phase two was really not negotiated yet. Well, we're going to see. So there's this vanilla rhetoric, this soft rhetoric when it comes to phase two and phase three. And again, this is what I've been saying is, you know, phase two, phase three might be this new plan. I don't know.
Mhm.
I,
I just want our hostages back. Like
yeah,
that's
yeah.
the
And we
main.
all we all want our
Right.
hostages back, and we got to do everything in our power to get them back. But we cannot get these hostages back if the result is Hamas stays in power.
No, of course, but I just like we're dealing with subhuman rats.
True, true.
So what would stop them from thinking, oh,
Well,
well,
Hamas
we're
really,
going to like murder like the
oh,
living hostages.
Hamas really blinked when they heard what Trump had to say regarding
Right.
this plan.
No, but I'm saying they blinked. But remember, we're not dealing with humans here. So
True,
they blinked.
true, but
They
they
can
do want
murder,
to.
but
But
they can murder
Hamas,
our hostages.
in a certain sense, again, they look at this subject as a political subject.
Hmm.
They want to survive politically. They have some cards still left,
Which is the hostages.
which is the hostages.
Right.
So what they're going to do is milk that and use that to their advantage. Phase one diminished a bit that advantage. That's why I supported it in the first place. And I don't regret it. I think it was
Hey,
necessary.
you completely convinced me. Like I can't tell you how many people I convinced the hostage deal because of you. So thank you for
Well, again, it remains to be seen. I'm always skeptical. I don't jump to conclusions. And that isn't every issue. You cannot jump to conclusions. Um, Everything is so volatile.
that.
Every war is volatile. Every issue is volatile, and we cannot jump to any conclusions. We have to focus on what is in front of us. At the end of the day, Israel is in this position because of their
It's
weakness.
policies, right? And it's
And
policies,
that's why we had to negotiate to begin with.
right?
Would they take territory and completely, you know, obliterate Gaza? Maybe we wouldn't have this discussion. But at the end of the day, this is where we are.
Mhm.
And we got to negotiate with the cards that is being given to us. So, phase one is something that, I could have lived with. Phase two, not that much. Phase three, definitely not. And we know that Mike Walls, Pete Hegseth, and,
They're more pro-Israel than the Israeli prime minister
the
is.
entire, exactly, the
Yeah.
entire administration understands, uh, and we're talking about Mike Walls, head of, national security and the Department of Defense, and they are steadfast in their commitment that Hamas cannot be allowed to maintain power.
So that's my only issue. And again, like I know they're pro-Israel, but they're pro-Israel to a policy extent. But again, like they're not Jews, right?
I
They
understand. I
and
understand.
also they have not been dealing with this for decades and decades. Like
I understand. I
they're not
understand.
emotionally they're not emotionally invested. But on top of that, they're not really understanding that again, the populations there are Hamas, and
Absolutely.
that they'll
A-
never understand that
Absolutely. I understand.
unless Netanyahu does his damn job and explains it to them. But obviously, he has not done that.
I understand. I understand this. But you know, we're dealing in a world of, it's not black and white,
No,
and
I get
you
that.
know, and it's a sad situation. It's a very complicated situation. Some of the complications comes from, failed leadership and tough leadership from Israel, and at the end of the day,
Well,
Hamas cannot.
anti-Israel policies is where this is all coming from.
So Hamas. So again, from a policy standpoint, from a victory standpoint, in terms of what the U.S. can do, is Hamas cannot be allowed. Hamas is not allowed to remain in power. What comes after that, that's going to be a struggle.
Right. No, but Mark, do you see what I'm saying? So Hamas,
I
if
understand.
you
I
know what I mean,
understand.
but again, right. So if they're gonna let back the Arab
I
occupiers
understand. I
in
understand.
whatever years, we're still gonna have Hamas.
If you want to have the Riviera of the Mediterranean in Gaza, you can have zero policy, zero, how do you say it? You can have 0%, 0%, like zero amount of terrorism, zero amount of terrorism in that place. If you really want to turn that into the Riviera,
But
because I'm not going to go to Gaza,
that's the thing.
my U.S. passport,
But
knowing
Mark,
that
but
I'm
Mark,
going to get sliced in
but Mark,
Gaza.
but Mark, remember they had the Riviera for 15, well, I would say 12 years.
No, no,
Our
no.
Saudi, yeah, it's beautiful. It was
It's
beautiful.
beautiful, yeah, but it's also a terrorist hub for, you know, I've never seen any foreigner go vacationing in Gaza.
Actually, that's not true. Other Arabs went to vacation there. They had beautiful
Yeah,
hotels.
Arabs, yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, I've never seen. Again, it's not
Oh,
on.
oh, Americans who love terrorists went there and they were safe and no one touched them because they're
Well,
terrorists.
it's very minimal, very minimal. This is not what the Riviera is, and this is not again.
No, but what I'm saying, we have to then be careful because here's the thing. Okay, the denazification of a population is not going to be solved by pretty buildings. It's just
True,
not.
true. No, there
And,
isn't.
and so there's no way that, let's say, this population was just bombed to shit by the IDF. So then they're going to be hopefully resettled somewhere. I don't know where. I'm like, maybe, I mean, this is what I'm hoping. Let's say Egypt gets convinced to take back their radicalized nationals. They piss off Sisi and Sisi applies the Muslim Brotherhood treatment to them. Then we don't have to deal with them.
Yeah,
But,
I think a
but
lot.
let's but
I
let's
think a
say
lot of. I think a lot of the problem with the people in Gaza is the integration. Like again, at the end of the day, if they get integrated in different societies, and let's not kid ourselves, a lot of these Arab nations, probably most or all, have a zero tolerance for
right,
terrorism.
exactly.
There's no way to commit terror there. If
Even Jordan now,
yeah.
I have to admit, yeah.
So what happens if these people get integrated in those societies? Um, are they stronger are they stronger in a sense that they can topple these societies
No,
with terror?
no.
So if that's the case, then you go into a phase of integration, which might be a good idea. It's
But
an
then, you're right. But then, if they're left there, but if they're allowed to return to
well,
to
I don't know if
Gaza,
the idea is I don't know if the idea is that these 1.8 million people each and every one should return. I don't think that's really the plan. The plan is really this place is open for business. If
mhm.
you want to live in that place, you got to be, it's basically it's like having an immigration, process, like coming into the United States. If you're someone on the terrorist watch list, you are not allowed to come into the United States.
But that's
And
with
we
prior.
still,
But hold on, but that's with priors. You know how many people we let in that are not terrorists, and then they become radicalized, and
okay,
then
because we had an open border. So maybe we should, maybe we
no,
should.
not open border. I'm just saying, like, you can let in someone legally. They have a clean record, then they become
Okay, then they
radicalized
become
here.
then they become terrorists.
Right.
So that's homegrown terrorists. Okay, so but that's like every country in a certain sense. Some get stopped before they
And
just.
also remember, they don't hate Egyptians. They don't, I mean, like maybe like in the past, but now they don't. Like, let's say they don't hate Egyptians, they don't
But,
hate Jordanians.
right,
Then they come back to
right.
Gaza,
But
and
again,
they hate Jews, and Jews are right next door.
no. So again, so let's conclude. The details is varies.
So the details are TBD.
Right.
Yeah,
But
but
there's
I'm just
definitely
it's important.
no one really tried the integration prospect, right? What happens to people when they are being integrated in societies that actually work, right? They have jobs, um, and there is zero tolerance of terrorism, and now they become like normal citizens of society.
Or they become like the Muslims in Europe,
Maybe,
not integrated.
maybe, but the problem with Europe is you've allowed massive amounts of Muslims coming into your country, but you have no law stemming terrorism. Like
That's true.
this is a progressive. What happened in the EU is it stemmed from a progressive ideology, allowing millions of people to invade your country,
With no vetting
uh,
process
and
whatsoever.
with no process. What I'm saying is, you know, and by the way, it's by far more than 1.8 million people, like going into EU and going to the other places.
That's true too.
What I'm saying is, we're talking about 1.8 million people.
Mm.
We're talking about multiple countries taking them in. Um, the question will be, does integration in real societies that they never had
Right.
work or doesn't it work?
Mhm.
And I think, again, there's so many questions. Maybe it does, maybe it doesn't. But there needs to be a solution to the Gaza subject. And so many people tried, so many ideas um, like was put out there, but it was all political ideas. Oh,
Mhm.
let's make a two-state solution. Oh, let's make a political process. I don't know. Again, I don't think this solution is a political solution. It doesn't work. I think maybe it's an economic solution. And again, maybe it doesn't work. Maybe it does. But there's a different conversation happening now. And again, I believe the Saudis are listening. It's just a negotiation tactic. But there's a lot of people in that region that are listening to that because people are sick and tired of bailing out that that part, that part of land, just to be destroyed again. It's
So
been done over and
you
over and
don't
over again.
so you don't think that this is all a ploy to appease the Saudis by wrapping this all neatly into what would ultimately be an anti-Semitic two-state solution?
We've got to be very careful that that might happen. We got to be very careful. Again, the details of this deal is just so.
See, I want to be positive. So again, like I'm keeping, like you said, an open mind. And a lot of things you said during this, during this pod, like I am keeping to heart. I'm like, okay, like he made a good point, this and that. Like I didn't think of it this angle. That's the point of these conversations. But I think it's also important to bring up the background issues. And again, it's up to Israel. It's not up to Trump, it's up to Israel.
It ultimately needs to be up to Israel
Right.
because at the end of the day, the question that I began this interview and this podcast for over an hour and a half ago is like, are the Israelis even how are the Israelis even accepting the fact that a part of their land
Right.
are given away?
Uh, again, again,
Isn't that
right.
what they fought for so long? Like,
Right.
there's so many like I really don't understand that aspect in
And all the
terms of
soldiers,
everyone jumping on the idea. Oh, we
and
got to
also,
build a Trump Tower. We
no,
got
and
to build
also
that.
and all the soldiers, we lost over 900, I think, at this point
Yeah.
in this war alone, so
It remains to be seen. This is why this era is the most interesting era that we're gonna see probably in our lifetimes. We're witnessing history. We're not backing down. Uh, the last episode that I did with you was before the election.
Mhm.
Now we're after the election, and it's a glorious America. Common sense is back. We're shifting the pendulum back to the center. The woke ideology is being dismantled. The administrative state is being dismantled, and we're not stopping. This is the third week, and there's still 4 years from this of this. So
I just want to make sure, and this is not
the
just
future is positive. I don't know. I'm optimistic.
no, and that's good. I just want to make sure, and this is not only for you, but for any Trump supporter who may be listening. Look, I fully on the Trump train. Like me, like we're friends in real life, and you know how much I love Trump and his policies, and literally was working on the Jewish Voice for Trump committee, and did a lot, like financially and events and policy wise. But I want to make sure that we, as a group, as Jewish, American Trump supporters, we don't become sycophants. Like it's okay to
Well,
criticize policies that we don't agree with either,
of course,
because we
of
have the
course.
extremes, right? Like we have obviously those who are inflicted with TDS, Trump derangement syndrome, for those who may not know that terminology. But then we also have those who anything Trump says is gold. And yes, he has a lot of great ideas, but like not everything I personally agree with. from first term. Not everything I personally agree with second term,
That's
you
that
know.
is indeed a democracy. You
Exactly.
know, it's people coming together from different aspects of life,
Mhm.
different religions, different thought processes, and we're coming together and we're basically democratically electing someone
Mhm.
that, yeah, we don't agree with everything, even between each other. Like, the movement is such a big movement. It's such a big tent. There's
And it's
so
growing
many.
even daily. Like I can't keep up with how many
Yeah,
how
there's
many
like
groups are
there's like
growing.
Democrats, Libertarians, Republicans, Conservatives. It's all coming together
We even
because,
have socialists that are part of
yeah,
that.
right. So
Yeah.
it's all coming together for a goal.
Mhm.
The goal is that most of the country understands that we've become a nation that has been hijacked by a unelected unelected bureaucracy, and basically they are the ones making the policy, spending our money, and it's literally we don't know a damn thing about
Mhm.
it. We've come to realize that the pharmaceutical industry is a problem, so RFK solves it. The intelligence community is a problem. We've got Tulsi Gabbard, we've got others, in the party that solve that issue. Um, you know, we've got spending as a problem, you know, the economic side of the US. So we have so many issues that, you know, that we've known to be true for a long time, but now everything is in the open. And that has united so many parts of our country to say, we're choosing that guy that is taking RFK Jr., taking Tulsi Gabbard, taking Elon Musk and Doge, taking all these interesting ideas. And because why? Not because we agree with every issue, um, you know, every issue that Trump said, every Trump policy or whatever. It's because we have one goal, and the goal is to dismantle the administrative state, to dismantle the pharmaceutical monopoly that that has been literally controlling so many aspects of our government, including and especially media. And we don't agree on every issue, and we really will hold accountable. Like whatever he's gonna say, whatever he says is like 100% agreeable, and yes, we're just gonna follow. We're gonna hold him accountable, and the fact that Trump is moving to the right on so many issues from his first term tells you who is really in control. It's we the people. There's a huge mega base. We want solutions. We want progress, and we are gonna just just go ahead and be tough. We like there's so many Republicans in the Senate, in the Congress that are really not on board with all this, right?
Right.
But we're pressing them because this is
Yeah,
not about Republicans. This is about Democrats. This is about
absolutely. It's about
this is
America
about
first.
the country being taken back.
No, absolutely. I agree with you. It's America first. And I wish that Israel were not part of what's going on. Like, had the Jewish genocide not happened, like Israel wouldn't be part of the conversation that we're having. It's just that, we are Jews. And
I
yes,
hate when Israel's part of the conversation.
yeah, me too. And that's the thing. So, like, I am an American first, but emotionally, it's impossible not to have strong opinions on policies. Like, if
As
they're
we should.
talking about, let's say, Taiwan and China, I have opinions about that too. I'm sure you know on whose side I'm on. It's not China's, but I'm not emotionally invested. I'm not Taiwanese, right? Like I'm not whatever other part of the world is going on. So, and I just want to make sure that, Israel has been screwed by America so many times. Like, for example, and I'll end on this, 1956.
Israel has been screwed by Israel so many times.
Well, right, but in 1956, Israel won back Gaza. Uh, but and then America, by the way, under a Republican administration, threatened Israel and said, "You better give it back, or we're going to vote against you at the UN, and we're going to pull your seat at the UN." I mean, now looking back, they should have said, "Okay, we don't need the UN. The UN is an anti-Semitic
Yeah,
cesspool." They
so,
didn't understand that, and but so that's the thing. It's like so at every turn America tries to screw over Israel. And I know that Trump is not going to screw over Israel, but again, he's working with information that he has. And it's up to us, the Jews in his administration, especially, they need to know and educate our president on the reality on the ground. So I'm putting the onus on them to do the right to share the right information. So I'm going to end on that. I'm thank you so much for your time. I think we really expanded so much on this topic, and also just for our audience. Like, I taught a class last night, my second class for taking back the narratives, Israel explained through the lens of history. And usually the Q&A session is just filled with topic related questions. Last night, all everyone wanted to ask me were my thoughts on Trump's proposal. So at one point I was thinking, oh, like I wish Mark were here to add to the conversation. So thank you so much for being such a great guest as before. And hopefully we'll have you back on other pressing topics as well as they come up.
yeah, we're not definitely. It's an honor. We're not tired of winning. That I can tell you.
Yeah, that's true. And hopefully we're going to have Israel win finally as well and win
Yeah,
long term.
there needs to be an end of this constant pain.
Exactly.
We need to conclude this terrible era of constant terrorism.
And it's going to be by policies. Like, I say, like, unfortunately, again, because of Israel's policies, we're in this position. It's one of the few times in history where a country won militarily against its enemies, but still lost. And that's where we are in Gaza right now.
Sadly, yeah.
All right. I wish you a good night, and we'll have you on probably at some point this season again,
No problem. Thank you so much.
if you accept. Okay. Have a good night.
Have a good night. Yeah.
Okay. Bye.